evening, my name is Casper, and today we are going to be talking about Stringendo, which is a 12-episode hentai created by Pink Pineapple and released in 2006. It tells a story of like 5 different chicks who have a sudden interest in their significantly less attractive classmates, and they end up doing it all over school, and town in some cases. So this was requested by quite a few people, especially Gil. I think he requested it the most, and I can actually understand why, because this is pretty damn entertaining. I mean, for the most part, each episode starts out with some semblance of writing. 2 girls are talking to each other about their crushes, the guys are chatting on the stairs before class, and so on. There are a couple of running gags, such as one character forgetting her food in the class mood and then running back to get it, which in turn has her stumbling in on someone getting it on. There is also something of a running storyline with one girl being blackmailed by one of her classmates and the super pervy science teacher having the hots for the super hot nurse, and there are a handful of funny moments. My favorite moment would definitely be when one girl gets caught by her teacher getting railed on the staircase, and he's all like, oh, I'm gonna tell everyone if you don't sleep with me, but then she's like, no, you're not telling anyone anything, and she gets like super angry, and he falls back on his ass because it's just like so out of the blue, and I thought it was funny. I laughed, and there were many other moments that made me giggle. While I wouldn't say there's any sort of legitimate plot to Stringendo, I do have to say I did very much enjoy this more than most other titles I've seen in the past, just because it's not like one of those series where they want to push a super shitty plot without wanting to put any effort into it, but they still put enough work into like the storyline that everything sort of revolves around. They put enough work into that to make it entertaining and to make it coherent. As for the actual sex scenes themselves, they're not revolutionary, but they are more interesting than most of the recycled garbage we see over and over and over again. Without sounding like a Tumblr feminist, I probably would definitely. Without sounding like a Tumblr feminist, I would definitely say that my favorite part about the sex scenes is how the characters, the females, they're not like overly submissive or like really innocent, which really just comes off as like really immature. They're confident, they're headstrong, they stand up for their own wants and needs, and this isn't one of those hentai that focuses explicitly on the male. So the visual quality for this series is not entirely good, but it's not bad. Like, for a hentai, everything's pretty well done. There's a pretty wide variety in character design with both the men and the women, but the men are specifically created to be very much like below the average Joe type, while the females are created to be these like super mega hot bombshells. That in itself is not a bad thing, because the entire theme of the show is about the losers becoming more acquainted with their hot senpais. But my issue is that they put a ton of work into the chicks, giving them more details in their eye design, especially with the eyelashes, by giving them more diverse hairstyles and facial expressions. They even had a lot more clothing accents and skin shines and shadows. The men, though, you could just see that they didn't put anywhere near as much work into creating them. Their eyes look almost half completed, like you're looking into the dead, soulless eyes of a corpse. Their hair was pretty much all pretty plain, and their coloring was usually pretty flat. This did create a very stark difference between the two, and it was actually relatively distracting in many parts. This was only made even more distracting by the fact that the designers intentionally creative, unattractive dudes. Outside of character designs, I do have another bone to pick with the visuals department, and that is the weird oral fixation. There is a crap ton of oral in this show. Like, so much. Which is understandable because this is directed at men, and men generally like having their dick sucked. But my issue is how they give you the POV from inside the mouth. Why is this a thing? You see the teeth and the awkward movement of the tongue, and it just looks awkward, and I just... And they do the same thing with making out too. Like, you see the tongues twisting around, and it's just really uncomfortable. They also seem to really overestimate how much saliva is produced, because damn. That being said, the animation was kind of meh. Lots of repeated frames and lots of reused footage, but not so excessively so that it starts to resemble Space Pirate Sarah, which was awful. I do have to give them credit for changing things up when need be, whether it be with the camera angles or positions or just whatever is being done. They did it just enough to keep you interested and to sort of like keep you on your toes without coming off as like everything was being edited by a YouTuber that's addicted to jump cuts. They also did a pretty decent job at creating different locations too. A lot of sexy scenes happened on school grounds, so there were a few reused settings, which isn't by any means a bad thing. But in some of the final episodes, we got to see these characters on like a train, we got to see them at a hot spring, or we even got to see them on an elevator at some point. That was just something positive that I felt was worth noting. All in all, I can absolutely see why so many people requested for me to review this. And I can understand why it's so popular. Despite my beef with the character design choices, and I will admit it does have kind of a ridiculous soundtrack, Stringendo was quite entertaining. And I think it has a grand total of 17 episodes spread over 3 different series. This specifically is just for the 12 episodes, but there are 2 more like mini-series that are 3 and 2 episodes each. And they all have some sort of continuity and they have relatively good writing, so that was nice. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Stringendo. Have you seen it? What are your opinions on the female versus male character designs? Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, you can find all of my social media as well as my Patreon in the description. Happy unbirthday, and I will see you later. Bye!